Welcome back to Fantasy Fights. This time we're going to start looking at ranking the top heavyweights of all time by generations. But before we get going, please hit the like button and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, tonight we're going to go through the first generation of heavyweights. And the first generation ended with Jim Jeffries' retirement. The second generation ended with Gene Tunney's retirement. The third generation ended with Rocky Marciano's retirement. The fourth generation ended with Muhammad Ali's retirement. The fifth generation ended with Lennox Lewis's retirement. And the sixth generation will probably coincide having something to do with Alexander Usyk. I hope you enjoy our look back on ranking these fighters. This is the first generation. It starts from 1882 when John L. Sullivan won the heavyweight championship, and this generation ends in 1904 with Jim Jeffries retiring undefeated. I don't believe I'm ever going to rank fighters of different generations. It's hard to compare one generation to another. Each generation is anywhere from 22 to 26 years. I think that's a time increment that is very comfortable rating the fighters within that realm. Hopefully you'll agree. This is an in-depth look. It's not for everybody, but for the hardcore boxing fan, I think you'll enjoy it. John L. Sullivan held the heavyweight title from 1882 to 1892. When Gene Tunney in 1928 was asked the greatest fighter of all time, he said John L. Sullivan, and the main reason was he made boxing legitimate. The thing you need to remember about Sullivan, back at this time, most fighters were corrupt. He could not be bought. He would fight bare knucks, and he would use gloves under the Marquess of Queensberry rules. He was the crossover fighter. He's the one that made boxing legit. Regardless of where you think he stands in the pantheon of heavyweight champions, as Gene Tunney said, he was the greatest because he made the profession legitimate. Before that, it was a pretty much a hoodlum sport. It was outlawed in most states. Sullivan made it respectable. Let's look at Peter Jackson from Australia. His family came from Jamaica. He was born a free man. In 1886, he won the heavyweight title of Australia by knocking out Tommy Lees, who was actually a legend there. Jackson left for America in 1888, and he wanted to claim the heavyweight championship of the world. He won the colored heavyweight championship, defeating George Gottfried in the United States. Jackson's mainly remembered for his 1891 fight against Jim Corbett. He had fallen out of a carriage earlier in the week before the fight. The fight ended in a 61-round draw under the Marquess of Queensberry rules. They did wear gloves, not big padded gloves like you think of today, but they did wear gloves. Well, what this did was this helped Jim Corbett be recognized throughout the country as the number one challenger to John L. Sullivan's title. Sullivan refused to fight black fighters. Obviously, Peter Jackson would have been the man that they wanted to see him fight, but he wouldn't fight him. So Corbett is going to catapult himself with this fight with Peter Jackson into the heavyweight realm, and in 1892 defeat John L. Sullivan in a 21 rounds knockout and gains the heavyweight championship. Jackson did not live a long life. He died, I believe, at the age of 41 from tuberculosis. Easy for me to say, TB. And he was basically a legend. There is no actual footage of Peter Jackson, but during this period, no question, he's one of the best. James J. Corbett was the heavyweight champion of the world from 1892 to 1897. His parents were from Ireland. His most famous fight was his 61-round draw with Peter Jackson in 1891. And he's called by many the father of modern boxing. He sparred with Sullivan prior to defeating him for the title, and he was very confident going into that fight. They used 5-ounce gloves. Sullivan was knocked out in the 21st round in New Orleans. Remember, boxing was outlawed in most states. So it was an illegal activity. The main source of his income was he was a great actor. He did a lot of performances, even later in life, and boxing exhibitions. He was also the first man ever captured on film. I put the film here with Peter Courtney, and then the first ever filmed title fight between Corbett and Fitz Simmons. Corbett was knocked out in the 14th round by a solar plex punch, and the film was released in the theaters. He later fought Jim Jeffries, who was a champion. He was 34 years old and was dominating the fight for 23 rounds, but got knocked out in the 23rd round by Jeffries. He fought all his fights with gloves. He's the first champion to do that under the Marquess of Queensberry rules. Bob Fitzsimmons, heavyweight champion from 1897 to 1899. He was born in Great Britain, moved later to Ireland, and ended up in New Zealand, and really started his boxing career in Australia. He held the middleweight championship, the light heavyweight championship, and the heavyweight championship. He was an incredible fighter and fought till a ripe old age. His occupation was a blacksmith. Tough fighter. Quite possibly the most dominant fighter of that period was James J. Jeffries, or Jim Jeffries, from Ohio. 6'1.5", 220 pounds, big, strong fella. Fought 2 draws early in his career against Joe Chionsky and Gus Rulan. But after that, he was undefeated. He beat Bob Fitzsimmons twice, James Corbett twice. Of course, these were 25-round fights, and his endurance was incredible. He could take incredible punishment, but he was a tough fighter, and he finally, in 1904, decided to retire because there was really nobody else left to fight. Joe Chionsky is a member of the top 10, 5'11", 176 pounds, of Jewish-Polish ancestry from San Francisco. He was in his prime from about 1888 to about 1901. And Jeffries, Jim Jeffries, who he fought a draw with, said that Chionsky hit him harder than any fighter he ever faced. His rival, Corbett, and Chionsky fought in 1889. Corbett came away with a 27th round knockout. In 1901, Jack Johnson and Chionsky fought. The future great was knocked out in the 3rd round by a Chionsky. They were jailed a short time after that, and they stayed in jail for 3 days. Chionsky and Johnson got to be good friends, and Chionsky became Johnson's trainer and showed him all the tricks, which led to him winning the heavyweight championship in 1908. Chionsky also fought a draw in 1894 with Bob Fitzsimmons. He also faced Marvin Hart. Incredible fighter, definitely one of the top 10. Sailor Tom Sharkey was one of the top 10 fighters at the time, from Ireland. 5'8", 185, very tough. Had a tattoo of a battleship on his chest. He's obviously in the Navy. He actually won his fame. He claimed the heavyweight championship in 1896 with his victory over Bob Fitzsimmons, which was highly questionable. Really don't want to go into all these different questionable fights, but he became famous with his draw against Jim Jeffries, and then he fought Jeffries in a rematch and lost a 25-round decision to Jeffries for the title. Peter Mayer, member of the top 10. To say he was active is an understatement. He won 141 fights and lost 28. He fought totally, just everybody. Very tough, from Ireland. 5'11 and a half, 180 pounds. At one point, he did claim the heavyweight championship of the world in 1895, and then Bob Fitzsimmons knocked him out in 1896. This was during the period that Jim Corbett was inactive. Another fighter during this period that was in the top 10 was a fighter named Kid McCoy. His real name was Norman Shelby, and I'm going to go through this as quickly as I possibly can. He was 5'11", 160 pounds, 81 victories, 6 losses, and 9 disqualifications. And I don't have time to go into the disqualifications, but he was a character. He won the middleweight championship and never defended it, moving up to the heavyweight division. He was of Scottish and English ancestry. He was known for his sharp blows. He would wrap his hands in mounds of friction tape to cut his opponent's faces. He was married 10 times. He was in Hollywood after his fighting days and appeared in several movies, and he was a good friend with Charlie Chaplin. He was broke, left the industry, an alcoholic. He was involved with a married woman who killed herself. McCoy later that day went down and robbed the ladies' antique shop, shot an individual and robbed 6 others. He was charged with murder and got a manslaughter charge, served 8 years in prison. He served in San Quentin, paroled in 1932. One of his wives, remember he had 10 of them, was worth, in today's adjusted money, $244 million, adjusted for inflation. He committed suicide in 1940 on an overdose of sleeping pills. And interestingly, he signed a suicide note, Norman Shelby. And that's really all I can say, is he was one of the top contenders during that period of time. Making the top 10 is Gus Rulan, one of the larger heavyweights during that period of time. He was 6'2", 200 pounds. He had wins over Tom Sharkey, Peter Mayer, Joe Chionsky, and Jim Jeffries he fought a draw with. His prime was rather short, though. He only fought from 1898 to 1902. He did fight for the title against Jim Jeffries in a rematch and lost that in the early rounds. The next 10 make up the top 20 in no particular order. Paddy Slavin from Australia, Jake Kilren from Boston, Steve O'Donnell from Australia, Mick Dooley from Australia, Tommy Lees from Australia, Charlie Mitchell from Great Britain, basically considered the best fighter there, George Godfrey from Canada, African-American, won the colored heavyweight championship. Philadelphia Jack O'Brien from Philadelphia, obviously. Marvin Hart, who actually won the heavyweight championship in 1905. And Jack Root. Now, having said this, you need to understand that there's not much footage on these fighters, so therefore it's hard to rank them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just giving you a ballpark where I think they fit in. I think some in the second 10 could possibly be in the top 10, but that's here nor there. Philadelphia Jack O'Brien and Marvin Hart could very well have made the top 10, but there's just no footage on these guys to be really strong. You just have to go on their record and you go, well, why don't you go on their wins and losses? Here's the thing you need to understand. There were so many fixed fights back then. Like Kid McCoy, he was involved in a lot of shady activities, as you might have gathered by his bio. And so it's hard to make legitimate decisions on these fighters, okay? Tom Sharkey was another one who was involved in a number of fights that were somewhat shady. So it's hard to rank them. We know they were great fighters, but these fighters didn't make a lot of money, so they were gonna do what they could do to make a living. And if it meant throwing a fight, they did it. And hopefully you hit the like button, comment, and share, and please subscribe. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.